And welcome to another edition of the Styles Cast. What's going on? I am Wes Styles, joined today by two gentlemen who I am so happy to have on here because their documentary is coming out next month, but I got a chance to see it last night. And gentlemen, first and foremost, let me get the introductions out of the way, and then I'll go ahead and fanboy on you. But Scott Barber, Adam Sweeney, the directors of The Orange Years, out on demand on November 17th. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Jinx.
Stereo. Oh man. Well, like I said, I'll fanboy real quick. Guys, last night watching this, my wife and I'm 37, she's a year older than me. Watching this and reliving our childhoods over the course of almost 2 hours was just absolutely fantastic. It was so fun to go through this whole thing and watch this. You guys did a fantastic job.
Thank you so much for saying that. We were really lucky. You know, credit goes to Scott and to Sean Cawthon and Jeff Johnson, the animator. Sean was the DP, and so many wonderful people that helped out on it. It's been an amazing ride, and definitely, like living a childhood dream, basically.
So whoever wants to take this question, what was the catalyst to make you guys kind of go down this path and make this project and start with talking about Nickelodeon in the 90s, which was their heyday?
Do
Absolutely.
you want to take one, Scott?
It's
good, Scott.
yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it started, Adam and I, we've been friends since we were like 11 years old. So we were fans of Nickelodeon while all this stuff was happening. So that's kind of the beginning. And then Adam can kind of tell he spent the night at my house. The year was 1991 or 2. And he spent the night at my house and we're like, oh, cool. New friend at school. And then, he can tell the rest of the story.
So it was the first night spending, having a sleepover with friends. We were in the gifted and talented classes together and just met. And so I was like, cool, this is gonna be awesome. We spent the night, we had fun, we went to McDonald's, had a Happy Meal, and then the next day I was like, this is great. And Scott was like, this is awesome. Let's have why don't you stay the night again? And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, well, let me call my mom real quick and we'll see if she says yes. So I called her and get off the phone, walk back in, kind of have a sober face, and Scott's like, what's up, dude? Like, did you say no? It's cool. We can always hang out some other time. And I'm like, well, she said no. And also my family is going through a divorce and I'm moving today. So we got to go. And so this was before Facebook. So you couldn't just have social media with everybody, right? So it was like, if you left, right, especially whenever you were little, like your friendships were probably over. So one of the ways that we ended up staying friends, actually, when landlines were a thing, is that we would call each other all the time and we would watch Nickelodeon together. And so we would comment about, just talk about SNICK and all of these wonderful shows that we loved. And it was kind of like, appointment viewing. And so it really helped serve as a catalyst and really formed our friendship, which has stayed for a long time. And then eventually, fast forward, Scott, I've worked as a screenwriter. Scott has worked as a filmmaker, an amazing videographer and also editor. And we had talked about the idea of making a film together. And we realized that a documentary was probably the most affordable way to go for first-time filmmakers. And I've been throwing and kicking around this idea of having like a Nickelodeon weekend that we had talked about for a while, just not as film, but just like a celebration, right? So like basically like a SNICK festival. And so we talked about the idea of, well, has anyone done a Nickelodeon story? And so we joke around and we say we did like 5 minutes of really hard and fast Google research, and we found out that no one had. Right. There have been some books which were really good, but nobody had done a story in terms of the visual medium. And so we looked at it and we, did a lot of brainstorming, and Scott worked super hard on it. And we said, okay, we found our story. Right. And it's a story that shaped not only our childhoods, but it shaped the childhoods of millions of people. And so we just feel really lucky, and it has been wonderful to get the chance to work with somebody that's so talented like Scott, as well as so many people that are iconic and people that a lot of the Nickelodeon fans didn't know about, who really, really were pivotal in order to shape that network.
Yeah, and there are a lot in the film. You guys were able to talk to so many folks. Was it hard to get everybody on board to talk about the film, or at least finding them and searching them? Because I mean, there's a lot of the shows you tackle, And a lot of those people who started those shows didn't go on to really to have careers after Nickelodeon.
Yeah,
Scott?
that was that was one of the tough things about our doc, is that we're not talking about one movie where you have your cast, we have a bunch of casts. So we knew that going into it, that it could be tough for us to get everybody. But everybody was super cool. Like when we would reach out to people and say like, do you want to be a part of this? Like almost everybody was like, hell yeah. This sounds awesome. A lot of people, that went on to have great careers in Hollywood, were excited to talk about this because it was some of their early work. Like some of the writers and directors of Hey Dude have gone on to be huge titans of industry. And they're like, I never get to talk about Hey Dude. I'd love to sit down and talk with you about Hey Dude. So yeah, it was definitely an undertaking to get that many people, but like everybody was awesome. It was awesome.
Now, for both of you, was there anybody that you particularly liked and had the most fun with interviewing? Adam, we'll go to you first.
That's such a loaded question. We were so lucky. The first person that we interviewed was Danny Cooksey, who has done so much, and he was featured in Salute Your Shorts. He played Budnick, and we showed up, and he and his family had like pizza and drinks ready for us, and that just spoke to the kindness of him. But I mean, you could go down the list, right? Like getting a chance to talk to everybody from all that, the opportunity to talk to Larissa Olenek, who was just amazing, right? And she still is amazing, and she's an amazing actress to this day. And you have people that were so supportive of us, and it was wild, talking to Geraldine Laybourne, who helped shape the entire thing, right? And we were so fortunate because she just doesn't do interviews, right? Because she doesn't have to, and also this was a while ago, but I mean every single person, and I think Scott would probably echo this. We can honestly say every single person was amazing, right? And you don't always get that, because people are busy and people have other things that they're doing and they may be distracted. But everybody was so cool to talk to. And there are so many people that we still talk to, Elisa Reyes, Danny Tamborelli, from Pete and Pete. Elisa Reyes was from, from all that. People that talk to us all the time. And that's so cool, right? Because who does that? So it's just the kindest group.
Scott, what about you?
Yeah, and I think that echoes, Geraldine Laybourne is the focus of our movie. And I think it shows her genius. She was such a great person that then hired great show creators that then hired great actors. And so I have to give her all the credit that one of the reasons why our job was so easy, we got all these amazing, talented, wonderful people who were also eager, was because she started it. She started all of that. And, like Adam said, it's a loaded question because, I mean, Danny Cooksey, Budnick, I was a fan of his band. He had a metal band called Bad for Good. You should check out sometime. They were created by Steve Vai. But everybody was amazing. Ross from Are You Afraid of the Dark? But the one thing I have to say is, I'm more of an 80s kid than a 90s kid. So Double Dare was like it for me, like between like Hulk Hogan, Mr. T, Pee Wee Herman, and Mark Summers, like those are the four guys that like raised me in a lot of ways, So we were setting up, we had done an interview in the morning and we were setting up the next interview. And it was it was at the very beginning. Mark Summers was the second interview we did, or the third, one of the very first ones we ever did. And we're setting up, we're hurrying, we're getting our lights moved around. And I hear this voice from the front door going, "Hi, I'm Mark." And it's like, oh, that's no crap, you're Mark. Yeah, you're Mark freaking Summers. So everybody was awesome. But just because of the time that I lived in, being an 80s kid, and, Mark Summers wasn't just Double Dare. He was the host of everything. Anytime Nickelodeon just needed a host to talk about stuff, it was Mark Summers. He was Nickelodeon. So I will say that kind of gave me like a where am I? What am I doing? Kind of feeling whenever Mark Summers walked into the room.
You guys talk about how you've been able to keep contact with some folks, the Pete's, as I'll just refer to them, the guys who played Pete and Pete both. They've been a part of this process with you. They've helped you out. They did the world premiere with you. What was it like working with them and bringing them on board with the project?
I think it was amazing, honestly. We're very fortunate, not just not just with them, but like Will McRobb, right? The Pete and Pete creators helped out so much. And so it was, I think that's a great question to ask, because really we got in touch with Danny and Mike a little bit later in some of the process, right? And so it really became this almost like cyclical or snowball effect, because understandably, whenever these are human beings and they're also performers, everybody wants to make sure that they're vetting, right, and that their time is being spent, so when you have two random people that are reaching out, that are like, hey, we're making a movie, you understandably are like, okay, well, maybe we'll see about it, right? So we had the opportunity to talk to them, and they were amazing. Danny was so kind to be part of the premiere. Mike was going to show up, but Mike had, I believe that night it wasn't a blizzard. Yeah, it was a blizzard in New York.
Yeah, everything's a blizzard for us. We're from Texas. Like, there's there's going to be an avalanche.
It's true. Like, I remember we were walking to the Chelsea Theater, and we were talking about doing snow angels, while we were going, and they're like, Geraldine Laybourne and like Larissa Leanick, everybody, they're like, so what are we gonna do about the premiere? And we're like, we're gonna play in the snow, and because we're from Texas, right? Yeah, so we don't get it. But going back to talk about Danny and Mike wasn't able to make it because of the inclement weather, but the opportunity to talk to both of them they're so awesome, and they do a podcast of their own right now. The adventures, I believe it's the adventures of Danny and Mike, right, Scott?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so it was amazing, and they have been so kind, and it speaks to kind of what Scott talked about. It's almost like, Geraldine and a lot of like the programmers were the parents, you know what I mean? And so it's like, sometimes like with great parenting, those fundamentals are passed down. And Danny is just, I haven't had much time to talk to Mike, but I can only imagine that he's just as cool. But Danny is just the kindest person in the world, and totally, very humble and just accommodating, and just such a good guy. And I mean, I would say like the Adventures of Pete and Pete definitely is one of my favorites. And I know Scott too. Like, we've constantly, we fanboy about the fact that Toby Huss, who played Artie, like, that he's gone on to have such a huge career, right? For like Halt and Catch Fire and Glow and the Invitation movie. And he's done so many other things. And, when we did the crowdfund, we were dressing up as different characters. And for Halloween, I dressed up as Artie, and, and was like, hey, Toby Huss, like, give a shout out, like, hey, what's up? And he just like responds, and he's like, not bad, boy, not bad. I was like, that's all the approval I need.
Yeah, Pete and Pete was the cool one. It was like the show that everyone thought was like it was the cool show, and it holds up big time. And everyone asks us like, who did you get that you wish you had? And when we were talking to Danny, Iggy Pop, who was he was on Pete and Pete. Like, every rock star was on there, and Iggy Pop's always been I've always been a huge fan of Iggy Pop. That's one of my my favorite performers, and that was one that I was like, in the film, like Adam said, that was one that we did almost at the end. We were pretty much done filming, and he was like, oh, I could put you in touch with him. And we're like, dang it. Like, that would be awesome, but we got to call it, So that was one that we didn't get to, but would have been awesome.
You talked about that premiere. That was back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. So now here we are, almost 2 years to the date of that premiere that we're going to see it out in VOD. Having it be that long of a gap for you guys, I see the eyes going, oh. You got to have a feeling of accomplishment now, knowing that the world is finally going to get to see it as a whole. Scott?
Yeah, very much so. We're very excited about it. It's one of those things where we've been sitting on this for a long time, and we had a blast at the premiere, And it's also something that people are very passionate about. People are like, when can I see it? When can I see it? And we're like, we want you to see it like yesterday, you know? We love it. And it is something that if you're in that age, you know, older millennials, Generation X, like it's something that you hold very dear. So we're very grateful to be working with Gravitas. You know, Gravitas Ventures is who's putting it out. They're wonderful. And we're very excited that they're getting it out there. And yeah, it's awesome.
Adam, anything to add?
Yeah, I think we got a crash course in filmmaking and how everything works, and it's awesome because you learn a lot about it, right? And I think that we were in the same boat as everybody that wanted to watch it, right? Is that, you know, we're like, hey, when's it coming out? When's it coming out? We want to know, you know. And we talked, you know, I think it's appropriate, and I appreciate the fact that you recognize like that. All of these came out in November. It's really interesting how it worked out because when we did our crowdfund, we got it done in November, and then we did the premiere in November, and then we ended up doing the 2020 premiere is going to be in November. So it's interesting how it all works, you know. And so yeah, and also it's awesome because I think in 2020, as the world is turned upside down, people are looking for something that is going to be positive, and they want hope. And I think that, you know, stories like this offer that for not only us because we're fans also, but hopefully for other people as well.
Yeah, last night watching it with my wife, there was many occasions where if it was the bumper music from Nickelodeon, like the cartoon bumper music or a theme song, the song would hit, and I'm sitting there, I'm taking notes, you know, getting ready for the interview that we're doing now, and she'd be singing along. I'm like, this is exactly what this is for right here. Like the goosebumps I get right now thinking about the idea and just having that fun and that joy. You guys crowdfunded it, and as we see here on the screen, you guys did some cool stuff with the crowdfunding too, and you're including artwork and stuff. So talk me through the process of coming up with the rewards for the certain donations to help the project happen. Adam, we'll go to you.
So with respect to the art, you know, I have to give a shout out to Scott and to Jeff Johnson, and also I'm gonna blank on his name because he wrote a poster. But there's so many people that have helped out and Scott will know it all right off the bat. But we were so lucky, and those were people that came to us with ideas, right? And so one of the, you know, with respect to the art, you know, I'll hand that over to Scott. But, you know, one of our favorite things to do, you know, one of my favorite pieces of this was we recreated some of the yesteryear classics by doing a trailer video, you know, with me and Scott as different characters. And so that was a lot of fun because we got to play Pete and Pete, and we got to do Are You Afraid That There We Are. Yeah. And then we, you know, but it was so fun, and we,
that's, you know, super flattering.
Yeah. You look great. And by the way, I always do wear my underwear outside of my my pants. It's just smart in 2020. But Scott can speak about a lot about Jeff and some of the other artists.
So this picture right here, earlier Adam said, you know, that the interviews got easier the further along we got, you know, like once we got like Mark Summers and Kenan Thompson and some people like that, everyone was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, you know. But early on, look at this picture right here. Like, imagine if those two guys called you and were like, be in our doc. Like, would you do it? Like, I don't know if I would. And that's me, you know, like you can see why we struggled to get people at the very beginning. I mean, Adam's at least like somewhat respectable, but those are like hot. And I think in the video, I even pull them up higher. But yeah, that's all we had to go on was this video that, you know, that me and Adam made where we're like pretending to be on Nickelodeon shows. But hey, it worked, and the film came out. But I guess to answer your question, in regards to the perks, you know, we just thought about what do we have access to, you know, that we can give people. And a guy that helped us really early on was Michael Ray Bauer. Yeah, there we are as Pete and Pete. A guy, Michael Ray Bauer, who played Donkey Lips on Salute Your Shorts. He agreed to it. One of the perks we had is you get a personalized shout out from somebody, like from their phone, kind of like Cameo, but this was before Cameo was a thing, I think. But he gave a couple of shout outs to some people for us. He helped us out really early on. He was super nice from the very beginning. Michael Ray Bauer, awesome guy. And then, you know, I have a friend named Jeff Johnson who is just a super talented animator. He's just awesome. It's one of those things where we didn't pick him because he's our friend. We picked him because he truly is a talented guy. And he did this thing we did, Nicktoons Yourself, where people could draw themselves as a Nickelodeon character, and Jeff did it. And Jeff also went on to do all of the animation for the movie, which, as you can see, we did. He had a Nicktoons style already. That's kind of his style. And so, like, for some of the stories that we had where nobody was filming it, there's no B-roll to support this amazing story, he would draw it, and it looks really cool. It came out really well. And then, kind of to what Adam spoke earlier, the opening art is another guy named Justin Harder, who is best known for doing the end credits for Deadpool. He did the artwork for our opening animation, and then a super talented person named Allie Clark turned his artwork into animation. And Allie's amazing.
I'll say one thing without giving away anything in the doc for those who haven't seen it yet. Again, out on November 17th on VOD. The animation about the Double Dare incident is fantastic. I'm going to leave it at that for when it comes out. Go back, watch this part of the interview, and then go watch the doc, and you'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah. I can give one spoiler. Jack dies. Rose does not let him back up on the drawer, which is really,
even though there's room. There's room for two people, but he dies.
Oh man. What was for you guys as a whole going through the process? Was there anything in particular you found out that you didn't know before that struck you as interesting, whether it's in the film or not? And we're going to go to Adam to start this one.
I mean, I honestly think that I think that the beginning of Nickelodeon, I had no idea where it came from, and we won't give too much of it away because that's obviously part of the story. But doing the research of that, I thought was incredible. And it's interesting how something that doesn't work can manifest itself into something that ends up being just remarkable, and even the idea, the concept of what they originally had come up with, in Columbus, Ohio, was still a really cool idea. Like you look at like American Idol and all of these phone-in shows, like they were doing this like decades before. And it just didn't work. But with that said, it ended up turning into something that was even better. Absolutely.
Scott, what about you?
So I'm a sucker for like failed technologies and things like that. I love reading about like Betamax or Laserdisc or anything like that. So that was one of my favorite parts too, because also, like me and Adam probably started watching Nickelodeon in like the maybe mid 80s, which is a lot earlier than a lot of people did, because we're just older. But you forget that there was a time even before that, like before we even started watching Nickelodeon and before it even was called Nickelodeon. So the whole cube segment, which Adam talks about, is this very bizarre technology that makes no sense, but then at the same time makes all the sense because people were trying to talk to their TVs back then with this big archaic thing. Don't want to give any spoilers away, but yeah, I love the cube section too, because it's just this weird 80s, 70s, 80s technology. And the other thing, because you can research all day, and we did a ton of research, but until you're there with the person, you don't know, and that's another thing that Adam and I talked about from the very beginning is this can't be a Wikipedia article come to life. It has to have more life and energy and everything than just that. And, we knew that Geraldine Laybourne did some crazy out of the box things. You can find that online, but we didn't know the level and the amount, the attention to detail and just how much of a trailblazer she truly was until we talked to her and talked to Anne Sweeney and Scott Webb and people that were close to her. So I think that's one thing, even going into it, knowing how wonderful and amazing she was. When we found out about it, I was still kind of like taken aback, especially that this was happening in the 80s, something that would be forward thinking now, it'd be progressive and forward thinking in 2020. But this was happening in the 80s. It's like, wow, talk about being ahead of your time.
You guys obviously went in with a particular idea and how it was going to be scripted, if you will, and the idea of how the storyboard was going to work. Interviewing all these people and the end product, throwing out a percentage idea, if you had it, how much did it change from where you started on paper to where it ended up on film? Scott.
I would say it was like 80% maybe. Like it was, we knew the from a rough stand, broad strokes, it was there, but it was all those details. And that's what we try to do with every show that we focus on. We want to give you something, a couple of things that you did not know before you watch the stock, so the broad strokes, it stayed there, because we knew the story we wanted to tell. And we had talked to a lot of people beforehand. So I would say 80. Well, I don't know. Adam, what about you?
I would tend to agree in terms of overall the final product. The thing that we talked about a lot and we joked is that we didn't want it to be just a film of remember berries from at all. And so because that would have been a disservice to everybody that helped shape those programs. It also would have been a disservice to the fans because, audiences, and I want to believe, me included, hopefully, but definitely other people are incredibly intelligent. And, they know a lot. I mean, like at this point, people know a ton. And so going back to it, I would say that at the beginning, as we were kind of formulating the idea, there were discussions about what the narrative structure and what the skeleton was going to look like. So we, talked about the idea of like going, chronologically, what that would look like. Then there was another version where we talked about it kind of having a tree, like, with the Nickelodeon, the story, which kind of is what we ended up having, I think, is that, if you think about the trunk was the story of Nickelodeon, the programmers. And then we have the branches, which become kind of these linear segments, right, about the films and the stories themselves. I shouldn't say films, the episodes and the programs themselves. But there were definitely moments where we had talked about the idea of like, okay, well, does this become a road trip to try to figure out like us to kind of like go back and like look at our childhoods and like what does that mean and what does it mean to do that in 2016. And ultimately, we wanted to we knew that the story was there, and the story was these brilliant people that were part of Nickelodeon, right? And they deserved every second of that film. So I think overall, I think that 80% sounds right of what the original product was going to be. I think in terms of what we formulated originally versus like what we would have hoped it to become, I would say 100%, absolutely, because we just were really lucky, and that speaks to how kind everybody was that we worked with.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. All the interviews are fantastic as well throughout. How much B-reel is there sitting on the floor that did not make the film? Is there a ton or?
Oh my God. Personally, that would be my dream is if we could, if we could do a docu-series about it. Because really, that's the thing we found out is you could do a documentary about like a bunch of these shows. That was the hardest thing, was finding like it. And it's a good problem to have. It's not that we were looking for footage. It was, how can we still do justice to this and also make it like, not 7 hours long. Right. So there's a lot, and we'd love to, we hope to do something with all that one day.
Who would you say would be the longest interview that you had out of everybody? Adam.
Oh, that's a great question. We had the good fortune to talk to Mark for a decent amount of time, as we should, right? Because he's kind of he was one of the gatekeepers, of Nickelodeon. And he had a ton of stories like afterwards. I think a lot of them because a lot of the talent had other projects that they were working on, right? We generally had 1 to 2 hours to get to talk to each one of them. And I think each one of them, like Scott said, had an hour to 2 hours worth of talking points and sound bites that could have been its own miniseries, like its own episode. And so there are so many times that I know that Scott and I looked whenever we were doing transcriptions and we were, figuring out what would put it in, because sometimes exactly what the clip that it's like, that is what we have to put in there, right? For sure. Mm-hmm. But then there's so many times that you look at it and you're like, can we put this in there? And also Scott can speak to this more because Scott was so heavily involved in the editing. So he deserves so much credit for that. And so he can talk, a lot about that. But I mean, every single one of them, I think, we were lucky enough to get at least an hour to 2 hours. Scott, who do you think was the longest one that we got to speak to?
And to to kind of tag along to that, it's hard to say because they all felt like 5 minutes, because everybody was so cool and awesome. But the thing that we kind of do with every chapter is we try to find an on-screen talent, at least one, and then a creator. Because a lot of times the actors, which is who people want to see, they were like, I was a kid, I was like 12 years old. Like I can't answer some of these questions. So a lot of times the creators were a little bit longer because they could go in, a lot deeper. And the way that we structured it, what Adam was talking about, kind of like the tree, where we're telling the Nickelodeon story, and then we kind of branch off, telling the Double Dare story, telling the You Can't Do That story, telling the Are You Afraid of the Dark story. So the people that I think could talk about Nickelodeon from You Can't Do That on television all the way to like all that, those were probably the longest because they had a lot, as opposed to somebody that talked about one show. Geraldine Laybourne and then Anne Sweeney. It's amazing that we got to talk to both of those people. When you look at Anne Sweeney and what Geraldine Laybourne have done, and they allowed us into their homes and talked to us. And the way that I kind of look at it is Geraldine Laybourne, she's like the heart of the film, and Anne Sweeney gives a lot more of the brain of the film, like the heart and the mind, they because Anne Sweeney was kind of Geraldine's second in command. And so she came in there and just gave us fact after. She came in just prepared. So crazy. In 1979, we did this. In 1985. And it's like, golly, the amount of research she did for our film whenever she's like was the president of Disney is amazing and very humbling that she gave us that time. So I would say Anne and Geraldine were like the longest just because they had so much to talk about.
Is there anything that you did not capture on a film that you wish you would have? And I say that because I talked to, I wish my mind's blanking on his name, but he did a documentary about horror films and cult films in general. And they had, Jeff Goldblum come in. And Jeff Goldblum came in, talked the entire time he was in hair and makeup, all the way to the time he sat in the chair. And finally had to stop him and be like, can we roll? Like, are you okay if we roll down there? He's like, oh yeah, go ahead. And they like missed all of that and had to try to recapture it and still have his enthusiasm in it.
That makes a lot of sense. Like sometimes you're like, hey, that makes sense because you're like, save it, please save this, right? Because that energy and that exact anecdote may not come up again, right? It may not be delivered in the exact form that you need for the story. Scott, is there something that you think that we missed?
No, I mean, I think about, of course, once the cameras are off, people tell you even more stuff always. Like you can't get around that. That just happens. But I think ultimately the stuff that they told us, I don't know if it tonally would have fit the film anyway, So there was a party that we went up to Canada and filmed for Abby Haggard, who was the mom on You Can't Do That on television. I wish we could have filmed that whole thing. We filmed a lot of it, but there was a lot happening there all at once. And it was like, whoa, this is crazy. And I had flown from Texas and I basically just showed up with a camera at the party. So maybe if I could have got a little bit more there, like that would have been pretty cool. But overall, no, I think that everyone was pretty open and honest. And we filmed a lot of footage for this. So overall, there's nothing that I'm like, dang, I wish we had been rolling at that one thing. I don't think there is.
Well, you guys did a great job overall with the presentation from front to back. I enjoyed it, especially the end too. And I know one of the perks of the Indiegogo campaign was if you did a little bit extra, you got to tell your story and your fandom, and they are featured at the end. Was there anybody in that part when you're doing those interviews that where you're like, whoa, you are really a super fan? Because there was a couple I'm like, man, the energy these people exude is just like, wow.
Yeah, there are definitely super fans out there, right? And there's a couple, and I'm gonna blank on their last name, but they live in Austin, like Wes and Emily. They got featured, and they didn't get featured in the film just because I don't think that we had enough time. But they did for Wes's birthday, they did a Nickelodeon party, and it got featured on Yahoo, right? And so whenever we went over there and we were filming, he had recreated like the aggro crag from Guts. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, I just make these you know, because I wanted an aggro crag, and that's how it is. And so yeah, Scott and I still talk about it. Like there are people that were so helpful to us and supportive that just reached out. They were just like, hey, by the way, I'm just a huge fan. I have this blog. Or hey, I have the largest collection of Nickelodeon memorabilia in the entire nation. I've checked, and this is, you know what I mean? And so we were like, wow, that's awesome. You know what I mean? And so that kindness only comes because people love because they love it. Right, because they love Nickelodeon, and so yeah. If we think that we're fans, which I think, you know, Nick and I definitely, Scott and I fall. I've got so many names that I'm thinking about. Scott and I are super fans. These people go above and beyond, right? Like it's like Nick is life.
Yeah, I wish we could have done even more of that stuff. You know, like I love talking to the fans. And, you know, so much of it was just like you saw, we funded this off of Indiegogo, you know, so there were people that lived in certain areas. We couldn't get to them. And some people sent in their own, like one of the guys in there, he sent in his own footage to us. But I love that, you know, it's showing the lasting legacy. And there were so many, I found it interesting how people can be fans in different ways. Like some people were fans of only a certain era, you know, and then some people were fans of only the game shows, you know, and didn't really like it. Some people were fans of only the animation. So that's kind of what I found was interesting is within the fandom, there's people that are fans of like certain things. But you know, we're making a Nickelodeon doc, so I couldn't very well like be judgy of anybody. You know, look, you saw the picture of me in the hot pink shorts, so I'm not going to judge anybody. So if you have an aggro crag, cool. Like that's awesome.
I wish I could find, you know what? I actually, before this interview, I went on eBay because it's mentioned in the doc about buying them. There's somebody that makes them and sells them on eBay. I'm like, as a kid, I was never athletic, so I was never going to be on the show. But I'm like, I showed it to my wife. She's like, no. Oh, come on, babe.
It's awesome. Well, if you need one and you need it, like we know a guy that can absolutely make those, and he does a great job. And I was in the same boat, by the way. Like Wes, like I would watch Guts, and I was just like, I would be like 4th place, and they have three people on there. Yeah. So
I was always scared. Like it depends on what you got. You know, I was like, oh, with my luck, it'll like when I was a little kid, I was like super fast, super agile because I was really small. But like if there was something that required strength or like, you know, throwing a football, I would have not done well. And I'm like, man, with my luck, I would have gotten all of those and just came in like last place, you know?
Basketball jump on.
Right. Yeah. If it was something where like, you remember there was one where they kind of had to climb through this, like it was all these ropes and stuff. I was like, I would kill that. I could just go through like without even having to like contort my body. I was so small, or like climbing up something. I weighed like 70 pounds. Like I would have been straight up, but with my luck, I wouldn't have gotten any of those.
I would have been the exact opposite, Scott. Like I would have been stuck in those ropes, just like the mummy from Universal Monsters. Yeah, and they'd be like, "Let's go back to Mo."
Yeah,
no doubt. And I'll wrap on this. Another thing that I loved about the film was the fact that I go back now and watch Rocko's Modern Life and Ren and Stimpy, which shaped my sense of humor as a child to my sense of humor now as an adult. But I go back and I look at both those shows. I'm like, the stuff they got away with, the adult themes and jokes. And I'm like, I'm looking at it now going, why didn't my dad let me watch this ever?
They didn't know. They were like, whatever, like Wes is behaving. He's watching TV. He's got his high C ecto cooler. We're gonna over here. I mean, and sometimes that's what you have to do, right? Like it's hard being a parent, I think. And you know, sometimes if your kid is behaving and they're watching something and they're not yelling swear words, then that's good enough. So, you know, if you're watching and stuff and they're not looking over to see you seeing like a cat and dog with like a rubber nipple collection, they have no idea. But yeah. But thank God they didn't turn it off, because we would have missed out on so much.
No doubt. All right. So guys, any last words here to wrap up on? Scott, we'll go to you first.
You know, we're really excited to get this film out there. We're obviously super passionate about it. And I think that, you know, one thing that Adam and I wanted to do from the very beginning was you know, is this nostalgia or is there something there? And I think we answer that in this film. Everyone always thinks the era that they grew up in had the best music, had the best movies, had the best TV. So we really wanted to answer, are we passionate about 80s and 90s, Nick, because that was what was on when we were little kids, so it reminds us of being a child, it releases endorphins, and we feel good? Or was there something that was actually magical? You know, like you take someone like Prince. Prince isn't amazing because he sounds like the 80s and it reminds you of the 80s. Prince is amazing because Prince is freaking amazing, you know? And that's what we kind of wanted to do. Is this something like Prince or is it something like Poison? Which one, you know? And I think that we answer that in the film, you know, is maybe it's not just nostalgia, because there's a lot of things from the 80s that I watched and I consumed and I don't care about now at all. And I have a son and I've tried to watch it with my son and I'm like, what is this? You know? So I think that there's a lot of great people that put a lot of passion into this. And I'm excited for people to learn about those people, because we all know the people that were in front of the cameras, but we don't necessarily know about the people behind. So I'm excited for people to learn about these people that were behind the cameras. And I hope you enjoy the movie. It's on, you can pre-order it on iTunes and Amazon right now. And yeah, I hope people enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it.
Adam, you're up.
I think that the main thing that I want, hopefully, that people take away is that, you know, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. Right now, you know, it's easy to be cynical. It's easy to be divisive. And that isn't, I think, uniquely how people are. People are authentic. People are real. And I think that the reason that Nickelodeon meant so much and still means so much to people is because it's honest. It's raw and it's vulnerable, and it shows that everybody can connect to each other if they'll just listen and they'll just reach out to each other. And so I think that, you know, it's a product of our friendship and a product of many friendships that happened. And so I hope that people take that away, and, you know, that people feel good if people walk away from this and they do feel good about it, and they also learned, you know, like Scott said, the story behind the story, then that's all that we could ask for. And you know, what more could I ask for than to get to do it with a friend that I've grown up with my entire life.
Absolutely. And thank you guys again for the film. Stay on the horn with me. Don't go bowing out just yet, but thank you all for watching this edition of Stylescast. The Orange Years is out November 17th. I'm telling you, go check it out.